In a corner of the bustling fishing port, the deck of the enormous ocean-going vessel, the Blue Ocean, was brightly illuminated by high-powered lights. Today was no ordinary voyage. Today marked the beginning of a historic campaign. A hunt whose objective might sound insane to amateurs, but was the very essence of life for seasoned fishermen. To catch and conquer a 100-ton haul of shrimp in the depths of the ocean. Ahead of them lay hundreds of nautical miles, turbulent seas where Mother Nature could unleash her fury at any moment. But in the hearts of every sailor on board, there was no room for fear. Only determination, fiery eyes, and an unwavering belief in the legendary catch of fish and shrimp to come. The ship slowly left the harbor, cutting through the waves and plunging into the darkness of the ocean, leaving behind the distant lights of the shore, beginning a journey that challenged. The waves began to grow larger, towering white-crested waves crashing against the bow of the ship, sending up a torrent of white foam. On deck, the sailors began their preparations in a systematic and precise manner, like a perfectly lubricated machine. Human strength was now amplified by a system of pulleys, cranes, and thick steel cables the size of a wrist. They inspected each mesh, each buoy, each connection, for a colossal target of 100 tons of shrimp. Tiny red and yellow dots began to appear, initially sparse, then gradually becoming denser in large patches at a depth of 200 meters. These were them, the giant shrimp migrating with the warm ocean current. Excitement began to spread in the cockpit, but the old commander kept a cool head. He knew that to gather a full 100 tons of shrimp into the net, casting the net at the right time and in the right coordinates was a matter of life or death. The enormous trawl net, the size of several football fields, slowly slid out from the stern of the ship and sank into the deep blue water. It resembled a man-made monster, opening its gigantic mouth to devour everything in its path on the seabed. The ship began to slow down, maintaining a steady drag to ensure the net was fully extended under the pressure of the tons of net panels. The ship sailed along the edge of the channel, carrying the heavy hopes of the entire crew. Each minute felt like an eternity, the pressure weighing heavily on the helmsmen as they had to keep the ship on course, preventing the nets from getting snagged on coral reefs or rocky indentations that could tear them apart in an instant. The journey lasted 10 continuous hours. The sun was high in the sky, The steel cables, taut like guitar strings, emitted a dry, creaking sound under the tremendous pulling force. The water behind the ship began to bubble and foam white. From the depths of the pitch-black sea, a faint, pale pink light began to emerge. It was the net bag containing the dream of 100 tons of shrimp rising to the surface. Its appearance disrupted the entire sea, the surrounding water seemingly boiling from the thrashing of millions of shrimp. When the enormous net bag fully surfaced, everyone on board was stunned, holding their breath at an unprecedented sight. A massive mass of shrimp, tightly packed together to form a giant artificial hill, shimmered with the pink of the shrimp shells and the silver of the accompanying fish under the high-powered lights. Its weight was so immense that it pulled the stern of the 1,000-ton ship down a full meter below normal sea level. The two men clung to the guide rope, gripping the steel platform to steer the enormous net as it was slowly lifted out of the water. Water cascaded from the net like a waterfall, creating a deafening roar. The 100-ton shrimp suspended in midair, a magnificent spectacle demonstrating humanity's conquering power over wild nature. The crane slowly turned, moving the treasure into the central tank on the ship's deck. The entire deck of the giant ship had transformed into a veritable sea of shrimp, submerged up to the knees of the sailors. The crackling sound of shrimp flicking their tails echoed like an incessant summer rain shower. Happy smiles, tight hugs, and tears streamed down the suntanned, wind-weathered faces of these steely men. They had done it. They had overcome adversity, weathered the storm, to bring home a record catch, a feat not everyone gets to witness once in a lifetime. Immediately, without a break, the processing and preservation lines on the ship were activated at maximum capacity. Sailors quickly swept the shrimp onto an automated conveyor system, were rinsed with cold seawater, sorted by size, and immediately transferred to a superfast freezing chamber at -40 degrees Celsius to preserve the pristine sweetness of the ocean. The work proceeded swiftly and rhythmically under the bright light of the lamps. Watching the sea of shrimp being neatly packed into the refrigerated hold, the captain smiled with relief, taking a sip of hot coffee. The blue ocean ship turned its bow towards land, carrying not only 100 tons of valuable shrimp, but also the pride of those who conquered the ocean. those who had written a new chapter in history with their sweat, courage, and boundless aspirations in the vast sea. Ahnatis momentined on the waves, but focused entirely on the two steel cables that were stretched taut to the point of emitting a heart-wrenching screech. The weight of 100 tons of shrimp crammed tightly in the net created tremendous drag, pinning the stern of the ship to the water's surface. The ship seemed to be struggling to bear the weight of a moving mountain from the deep sea. The hydraulic winches were operating at full capacity. On deck, four burly sailors stepped up, their hands wrapped in bandages for increased grip, tensing their muscles to cling tightly to the two large ropes connected to the mouth of the net. This was a moment of life or death. The 100-ton net, once lifted from the water, would become a giant pendulum. If left to swing freely with the ship's waves, it could easily crush the control cabin or sweep all the crew on deck into the deep sea. Tension was evident on their tanned faces. From the pitch-black depths of the sea, the final section of the net slowly emerged. It was no longer an ordinary net, but a gigantic, dense, pinkish-silver sphere. Millions of shrimp, compressed under high pressure, formed a massive, tightly interwoven biomass. High-powered lights shone on the net, reflecting millions of glittering specks from the shrimp's polished calcium shells, creating a sight that was both magnificent and somewhat frightening. The terrifying weight hanging overhead made the air feel thick and heavy. No one dared breathe loudly. Every meter of movement was a millimeter-precise calculation by the winch operator. When the net was finally positioned about 1.5 meters above the deck, the chief sailor stepped forward, gripping the rope and pulling the hydraulic safety lock at the bottom of the net. He glanced around, ensuring everyone had retreated behind the safety barrier. The net at the bottom burst open, and instantly, a massive pink torrent gushed out, crashing onto the deck with unstoppable force. 100 tons of fresh shrimp, each as big as a hand and plump, poured out like a whirlwind. They didn't lie still but simultaneously flicked their tails and leaped with a crackling sound under the lights. The sound of millions of shrimp colliding with each other was like a giant hailstorm pounding on a tin roof, echoing across the deserted sea. In less than 2 minutes, the entire vast deck was completely filled with a veritable sea of shrimp. The shrimp swarmed, rising to waist height, overflowing the walkways and encircling the sailors' legs. The spectacle was breathtaking. The vibrant pink of the live shrimp blended with the shimmering silver of the fish sheltering within, creating a perfect picture of the ocean's abundance. Cheers and shouts of excitement echoed incessantly, tearing through the night. Men, weathered by sun and wind, plunged into the sea of shrimp, scooping up large handfuls and holding them high as if they were precious gold bars from the ocean. Loud high fives and radiant smiles brightened the cold expanse of the night ocean. It was a well-deserved reward for sleepless nights, for the lurking dangers, and for the unwavering perseverance of these sons of the sea. They knew that the 100 tons of shrimp on deck at that moment was a huge asset, but it was also a time bomb in terms of quality. If not processed and frozen immediately, the heat of the air and natural decomposition would reduce the value of the shrimp within hours. The sailors used large, specialized shovels to rhythmically push the dense layers of shrimp into the automated chute and conveyor system. Under the never-ending high-powered lights, the deck of the blue ocean became a giant biomechanical factory, operating continuously without a moment's rest from midnight until the first rays of the new day began to split the horizon. As the shrimp on the deck dwindled, pride and sweet exhaustion became evident on the faces of the sailors. By the time the last shrimp was neatly packed into the freezer, the sun had risen high, painting the vast ocean golden. The feet, clad in rubber boats, were submerged deep in a vibrant pink shrimp, each step heavy as if wading through a golden swamp. At these moments, scanning system and high-pressure cold seawater jets were operating at full capacity, creating a hazy mist that shimmered in the early morning sun. The ocean shrimp, with their thick, hard calcium shells like armor, flicked their tails with a crackling sound, creating a colossal, incessant mechanical dance. The remaining half of the journey, equally arduous and harsh, was a frantic race against the relentless decomposition by nature. Under the increasingly intense sea sun, if the entire shipment of shrimp wasn't quickly moved into the freezer, all the effort of the entire voyage would be wasted. The ship's production manager constantly checked the surface temperature of the shrimp, giving strength to his arms, which were aching after a sleepless night. The sailors, divided into teams of 3, stood along the slides and conveyor belts. They coordinated seamlessly, like programmers of a biological machine. One used a large, specialized shovel to scoop up the shrimp, another sorted them by size with lightning speed. And yet another continuously arranged them into shaped trays. The tiger prawns and white-leg shrimp, as large as a wrist, with their translucent bodies revealing their firm flesh inside, were neatly arranged in rows. From the captain's high cabin, the deck resembled a giant anthill where each member was an inseparable link. There was no distinction between mechanics, sailors, or foremen. All wore the same sweat-drenched shirts and bleeding scratches from shrimp spines, but strangely, not a single complaint was uttered. Instead, there were sea songs and the boisterous, rugged banter of men who made the sea their home. Deep in the ship's hold, completely isolated from sunlight, refrigeration workers toil in a stark contrast to the harsh environment. While the deck is scorching hot like a summer at sea, down here it's bone-chillingly cold. They wear thick protective suits, their breath turning into thick white smoke. The steel shelving system in the cold storage holds thousands of trays of goods, and it's slowly being filled. The dazzling sunlight poured down onto the emerald blue sea. After 12 hours of relentless fighting, the last shrimp on the deck had been cleared and safely stored in the hold. The deck of the blue ocean, which just hours before had been a vast sea of shrimp, was now thoroughly cleaned, leaving only the gray but gleaming steel deck beneath. The legendary trawling net. All the sailors slumped onto the deck, leaning against the sides of the ship or the hydraulic winches. They were exhausted, their eyes dark with lack of sleep, their hands swollen and aching, but smiles never left their faces. The foreman lit a cigarette, the white smoke drifting out into the sea breeze, dissipating into the vast expanse of the sky. The captain stepped out of his cabin, looking down at the deck with eyes full of pride and gratitude. Behind the ship, the water parted into a long, white foamy trail, like a silken ribbon connecting the open sea and the shore. The ship was now much heavier, its sides sinking deeper, below sea level under the weight of 100 tons of treasure, resting safely in the refrigerated hold. The return voyage would be a journey of joy, of anticipation from family, friends, and traders eagerly awaiting them at their hometown fishing port. They were not only bringing back a record catch. They brought back abundant economic resources, but more importantly, they brought back legendary stories, invaluable experiences of courage, perseverance, and solidarity in the face of the vastness and grandeur of Mother Ocean. The story of today's 100-ton shrimp catch will be told forever in the drunken nights over strong wine in coastal fishing villages, further igniting the flame of aspiration in future generations of fishermen to continue venturing out to sea, clinging to the ocean.